There are a lot of really good reasons why no human-born relationship can survive just on the merits of the sex inside that relationship by itself. But I'm just going to share today, of all the reasons that there are available to explore as to why that's the case, I'm just going to share a few of them with you this morning. This is an interesting subject because when people first get together, especially younger people, when they first get together, one of the characteristics of their relationship is the amount of sex they have. They have a lot of sex, morning, noon, and night, if it was possible, they'd be at it. But the reality is, this is also the reason why a lot of relationships, whether they're among younger people or older people, don't survive, because too much or an inordinate amount of attention is given to the sexual aspect of the relationship. It can't survive on just like a human body cannot survive just on water by itself forever and forever and forever. It can last a good long time, but after a while, you need some solid food. And that's the interesting thing about how you build a relationship and having sex in its proper place inside that relationship, because solid food between people can only be shared from mind to mind, not just from body to body. One reason why that you cannot just have sex alone in a relationship as a determining factor for the longevity of that relationship all by itself is because after a while, even though the sex evolves and it becomes better over time, people also evolve mentally. People evolve emotionally. And what happens is almost inevitable that regardless of how good the relationship is, two people are not going to evolve at the same pace emotionally and mentally. They're going to evolve at different paces. And if you have two different people who are in different places in their lives, let's just say, for example, the girl is someone, the woman in the relationship is someone who's very active and proactive as far as academics is concerned, as far as building up her financial prowess is concerned. And let's say the guy in this particular case, not so much. Well, the sex is good for a while until she starts to pull ahead of him in terms of maturity on an academic scale or an intellectual level. Then it becomes harder because, you see, like, for example, the sex that they could have at the most hour and a half, maybe in the course of a day, that leaves a whole lot of other hours where they still have to deal with each other on a meaningful and very fulfilling level. And it's really hard to do that just with sex alone. So even though with great sex, they can reach each other's mind through the body, it's still a very limited journey that way. It's better to reach each other mind to mind and then affect the body, because you get more empowerment out of the relationship that way, because you start to learn more about each other in ways that have nothing to do, absolutely 100% nothing to do with sex, and have everything to do with understanding each other's true character and all of the facets that make each of us who we are on a personal level. That's one reason why sex alone is limited when it comes to that, because that mind-to-mind connection is what is going to lead to a heart-to-heart connection. Because the more that you learn to learn about a person, the more that you learn to like about them, the more you're willing to love them. And the more that you're willing to love them, the closer your hearts become. I know that sounds like some new age crap, that, some poetic stuff that has no real relevance in the real world. Believe me, humans have not changed since God invented them. We still need a very intimate and very close relational component between us, men and women, on a non-sexual scale in order for us to have fulfilling relationships. Another reason why sex alone will not ever be enough to carry a relationship far into the future is because as people grow and as people mature, they have their ideas, the things that they liked, let's say a few years ago, they may not look at those things the same way now. And sometimes the differences in how we see things now, as opposed to how we saw things a few years ago, can lead to conflicts between two people. Because one person might still be holding on to the ideology that got them together in the first place, while another person is starting to distance himself from that ideology. Let's say, for example, one person in the relationship, when they first got together, every Saturday, Friday night, they go out partying, clubbing, everything else, and a good chunk of their pay is going towards that. Their weekly pay at work is going towards that. Now, As they mature, let's say the guy decides, well, I don't want to keep spending my money that way. I want to have something held back in reserve for a rainy day in case something happens. Plus, I don't feel like partying as much as I did. Let's just say the woman in this case, she still is holding on to what originally brought them together, the partying. Well, this can create conflicts because when she wants to go out now and he doesn't, then she just decides for whatever reason she's going to go out anyway. He gets jealous. He gets upset. He gets suspicious. What's she doing out there and all this other stuff when he's not there? These are possibilities. And let's just face it, they happen a lot between people. So this is another reason why just the sexual component alone will not lend to the survivability of that relationship if two people are not still on the same page as opposed to when they started. And if they're still not on the same page today as opposed to when they started. It's another reason why, again, sex is not going to be a vehicle to take that relationship further into the future when two people start to grow apart that way. A third reason why sex alone will not help the survivability of the relationship. Let's say some kind of medical issue creeps up in between the two people. Let's say lady's up on the stepladder in the house one day cleaning off the ceiling fan and falls and she injures her back. Now she can't have sex for whatever reason. It's uncomfortable for her, or because of the motion, the kinetic and the physiological motion of sexual activity makes it impossible for her to engage in sex. Now what? If all they had between each other was the sex all this time, what do you think's going to happen when one of the partners can't engage in sex anymore? They start looking elsewhere. Because nothing else, the real glue of the relationship that they needed, that mind-to-mind connection, that mind-to-mind intimacy, at least a heart-to-heart closeness, was never there. In other words, they never truly developed the friendship that they needed in that relationship to keep them going. You see, all they had was the sex. And we won't say that's all they had. Let's just say that was most of what their relationship was centered around, was the sex. If that's the case, then they're going to be in big trouble the first time that something happens and one person can no longer perform sexually for either for an indefinite period of time, or who knows for how long. I've known couples where the guys had prostate cancer, and one of the effects of the cancer is that he lost his libido. He can't perform sexually. Well, what happens with that relationship? Well, you better hope that you guys had a very good friendship and a very closeness to each other prior to all that happening, so that you don't have all of the other conflict and the craziness that can creep into a relationship and wreak havoc simply because there's no sex. A fourth reason why sex will never, ever be enough is because as a physical activity, it does not allow two people to truly come to trust each other. It doesn't. Sex doesn't do that. Sex does not allow two people to come to trust each other. And that's one thing you need in any relationship in order to keep it viable. You need trust. You need trust. As a matter of fact, when it's a highly sexual relationship, or sex pretty much just straight across the board in a relationship, one of the first things that goes is any small level or sliver of trust that relationship had in the beginning, in the first place. Even if you're having sex every day, that trust starts to go, because what happens when you're having sex with the same person over and over again, and that's all that you have between each other. Even if that goes on for years, if that's all that you have, eventually it gets boring. It does, especially if you've tried every position and you've tried every type of concoction and every type of scenario, from role playing to using some people with whips and chains and all that stuff. After a while, it gets boring because it's not going to be enough to hold each other's attention. It's not going to be enough, because sex in itself is just sex. Let's just face it. Even lovemaking, which is based on sex, is rooted deeply in sex. But lovemaking is not just about sex, But even that can get become stagnant. It can become so routine that after a while, it doesn't hold as much allure or as much attraction as it did when two people first got together. This is why it's important not to just rely on sex to hold a relationship together. And for a lot of you women out there who say, and I've had women tell me this, well, I don't know why he left me. And, you point to themselves, say, well, he left all of this, meaning the sex appeal that he had. Well, let me tell you something, ladies, about guys. A lot of guys will screw just about anything that's got a skirt on, okay? So all this doesn't mean anything if all of that was not involved in the relationship on a level that was enough to hold you guys together. If just the very fact you guys say he left all of this is just an indicator right there, very powerful indicator that your relationship was based primarily on sex and not on anything meaningful like a mind-to-mind intimacy. Don't ever underestimate the mind-to-mind intimacy, because the more that your minds come together, the more intimacy there is, even on a sexual level. The sex improves dramatically when two people meet mind to mind and then heart to heart. Well, I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you today. My name is Dave Thomas III. I'm your relationship coach here at Faked Out by Love. Be sure to like, share, and comment on this video and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have your support. All right, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again.